Hi, I'm Shoshana Kesak. I'm a contributing writer to a bunch of different places, including the Geek Initiative, Mary Sue, Tor, and a few other places, and do film criticism, game design on TV.
Hi, my name's Kate Baxley. Sorry, wow, I just got really nervous and I was only telling my name. Okay, I'm the community and social media manager for the Geek Initiative, and I have a background in film and photography.
All right, thank you. So for everybody that walked in, just so you know, we're going to kind of discuss, kind of look at comic book movie fans and kind of take a look at whether or not DC or Marvel are being progressive enough. Is there enough diversity in these films? And I know Tara has some stuff that she'd like to present, actual data that she put together.
Thank you. So using SEMrush, which is a competitive intelligence platform, and also my employer as well as Kathleen's, I went ahead and did an analysis of DC and Marvel, and we looked at the keywords that they use to see what's being looked up more, and overall I found that Marvel is just doing a better digital marketing game than DC, but I did a closer look actually at the social media, and not only did I look at who is doing better, like who has more Twitter followers and such, I looked at who they're doing better with. And I found that they both do more outreach than they used to marginalized groups, like people of color and women, but found some specific examples of who was kind of doing what here. So in this chart, I just have kind of a basic rundown of how many followers and such that they have on each social network. You can see Pinterest, for example, is wildly popular among women more so than men. And you can see that Marvel is putting more effort into their Pinterest board than DC is right now. So that would suggest that they're actually targeting female consumers on that platform. YouTube, that's one that kind of everyone checks out, and they're both doing pretty well there. Just because Marvel has more in all circumstances doesn't mean that DC is doing a poor job. They certainly do a pretty good job of maintaining an online presence, but Tumblr is actually another platform that is frequented more by women, and Marvel has a better presence there as well. And then I just wanted to show some examples here. You can see just by what they post on social media, kind of like who they're looking to go after and who's interested. There's just some examples here. I'm going to find one specific one here. Oh, here it is. Okay, so for cosplay, Marvel actually highlights cosplayers on their social networks, and they did Costtoberfest where they did this and actually highlighted cosplayers. And as you can see from this screenshot, it's actually a pretty diverse group of people that they're highlighting. And what's DC doing? They're obviously also targeting the female consumer here, but a lot of it's really product oriented. Like, hey, buy these cool, Wonder Woman clothes, like they are cool, and I would like to buy them. But I feel like I would personally feel
the Flash has a black father, like that's just what it is. And Oliver's brother, Diggle,
Yes.
We hear them say that, we hear them acknowledge that. And to me, even though it's on the smaller screen, the message is stronger because, here we have, especially with Joe West, he's raising this little boy, and not only is very well-rounded and successful, he's a hero. And this is, from seeing his mother being killed, his father's in prison, and he's just turned out to be the best, and that was Joe. So I think that sends a very positive message. I was very disappointed how they ended season 2, how everything's going to be erased and changed. I don't know what they're going to do with that, but I think that in terms of positive messages for at least people of color, that DC totally trumps Marvel, even though it's not on them.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point, especially when you consider that you're just a mixed family in general. Like, that's very rare to see on TV, and seeing it in such a prominent brand like The Flash really brings a powerful message, especially to teenagers that would tend to watch these kind of shows. And it's something that I think Marvel is really lacking in their movie universe, especially when it comes to, people of color and women, especially too, because there's a lot of characters that they could have chose to put into the Avengers, but there's some that, even if they're there, they haven't been really well represented. One of them being, the Black Widow and Scarlet Witch in particular. And I know there's a few people that have something to say about that.
Oh, Callie, tell us
Callie,
about
tell
Scarlet
us about Scarlet Witch.
Tell us your feelings, how you really
Callie
feel.
loves
Don't put me on the spot. Don't put me on the spot. I really did not like Civil War. There's probably going to be spoilers here. Do we still
Warning.
Do we still need to say spoiler
A
alert?
couple movie spoilers.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, there might also be comic spoilers too later in the discussion, so if you haven't kept up with, reboots and recent announcements on either brand, you might want to step outside.
And I apologize about that Flash spoiler then.
Well, the Flash that's not a spoiler, that's pretty much part of the character. It's always a flashpoint if they need a reboot.
Anyway, moving back, I saw in some of the interviews they said they felt like they really had to constantly emotionally compromise Scarlet Witch so that she wouldn't just steamroll everybody. And I really don't like that we just constantly have to, I'm so nervous, I'm sorry.
It's okay, take a breath.
Because she's got all these wonderful empathy powers and they keep making that this huge weakness. And she definitely is the strongest. We saw her like completely, seriously ground division. But during the airport fight, what's she doing? Nothing. Yeah. She saves Bucky once. She throws a few cars around. And then what does she envision doing for that entire fight? Nothing. And when Team Cap has realized that they're just not going to make it out of there, every single person gets to say, it's okay, go on without us, except for Wanda. And we know she's got one of those communicators because she had one in Lagos. And it's really not cool, especially because she's the one who suffered the most out of that.
Well, it could be, to counterpoint that maybe Marvel itself is waiting for a bigger reveal about Scarlet Witch, especially because they can't really go the mutant route. They might be waiting for after Doctor Strange to really bring power to this character, and they want you to empathize with her first. I kind of get a feeling for this character so that her growth on screen looks much more spectacular than it could have been. Because, I mean, let's face it, Civil War was very overpacked with people, and it made a lot of stories kind of like rushed. And so that might be something that they thought maybe she deserves a better story. And they're just kind of waiting for that moment to give her her own story or continue her later. Like we heard that with Black Widow having an announcement of her film, maybe they're waiting to do that for Scarlet Witch.
Well, are they actually doing a Black Widow film, or was it like a big maybe?
It was a giant maybe.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
we're committed to maybe considering this.
So then DC's winning there too, because Wonder Woman, guess what? That movie's in the can and that's coming out. And I'm pretty sure after the success of Suicide Squad, they're gonna wisen up and do a Harley Quinn movie, or they need to. I would love to see that.
I mean, I think that really one of the major problems we're seeing with the Marvel movies is the representation of women, in the sense that the women are constantly getting the back seat in these films, even if they're considered an ensemble piece, right? So all of these films are being led by men no matter what, and the stories of the women are constantly getting pushed to the side. I agree completely about Scarlet Witch. She was literally either damseled the entire film, was rescued by men over and over again, put into prison, never got to make any choices. She was a background piece, and like, you might as well have had a forklift in her place. Like, that was she was the forklift of the game, and it was of the movie. And really, it's frustrating because I think that Wonder Woman, unfortunately, in Batman and Superman versus Superman was exactly the same way. And I'm hoping now that we're seeing more of her film, that, thankfully this movie has a huge budget. It's got, if I'm not mistaken, a woman director who's, behind it. Patty Jenkins.
Directed Monster, which Charlize Theron won the Best Actress for in 2005.
Yeah.
But see, I'm also worried about how they'll treat Wonder Woman in general, because she had a TV series that was supposed to happen and they completely rewrote her character. So if they choose to use her and like have this film be about the same Wonder Woman that we saw in Batman vs. Superman, that's great to see, but I want to see more of like her character development, see more of her being a hero as opposed to being a woman hero. Like, I
wanted to see her not introduced in a movie headlined by two male characters.
Yep.
Even, it's great she has an awesome, big role in it, but if there was one female character in either of these franchises that they could have just launched to carry this whole thing, it would have been Wonder Woman. They have a feminist icon, and they put her in a movie headlined by two
Yeah, she's pretty much always been that representation of a woman superhero that in any universe, she is like the epitome that a lot of people live up to. Whether it's a new series or an older series, they kind of hold themselves to the Wonder Woman standard. Is this character really doing justice as a hero and as a woman? You know, is she shortening herself? Is she truly like working with people and, you know, being a part of the story as opposed to being the damsel of the story? And I think that that's really the biggest scare I have with her is I'm not sure if her film will actually show what Wonder Woman should be. And that's a problem we're going to see with Marvel too.
Well, I think it was a strong introduction. Honestly, I was skeptical at the casting choice. I wasn't sure what direction it was going to go in. So I was fine with them bringing both her and Batman, for that matter, or this version of Batman, into a Superman film. I think they both have really great, strong, stable characters. But as far as her film is concerned, it's actually going to be, or at least as far as I can understand, a period piece.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be like, what 70, 80 years prior?
Okay.
So it'll be like a, yeah. So I think that'll be fine, but Wonder Woman she came out the gate strong, I think, in this film. I know a lot of people either didn't like Batman vs. Superman or didn't see Batman vs. Superman, but let me tell you, Ben Affleck is now officially my favorite Batman. I think he did a fabulous job. He was, are there children in here? He was badass insane. Like, this man was on medication. Like, he was taking psychological meds. I thought that was fabulous, though. And I really liked Wonder Woman. I really liked seeing her presence on screen. She came out strong. She wasn't a damsel. She actually came in to help rescue the day. So.
Well, maybe she'll end up becoming the standard that maybe Marvel will look to when they start doing their own, you know, women superhero solo films. And we'll get to see more of that. But I mean, there's a lot of pressure on Wonder Woman at this point to do that.
Sorry. Just to go back to what Jill was saying, when Wonder Woman basically came in and saved the day, I mean, a lot of people could look at that like the super feminist and say like, oh, but she was saving men. And so I understand where that comes from. At the same time, it was also her moment because she didn't really shine throughout the film. I mean, I understand she's going to have one coming in the next year or so, but that's just another argument that people can say about her, how she was kind of lacking, which I think she was in this movie, but her name wasn't in the title. It was Batman and Superman.
I think the one thing that people have been sort of saying is that, you know, Wonder Woman is the big movie that's coming out that's got a woman headlining, and there's been so many discussions about why women-headed films, especially in genre, don't make money, right? Like that was the discussion about why these films weren't existing in the past, was they look back at things like Catwoman and Elektra and said, well, they flopped, and so, and
For a lot of other reasons.
There's a lot of reasons why they flopped. They were bad. Like they were just bad. So like you can't make, you know, you can't make a rose out of, you know, a dandelion. It was a bad movie. And then at the same time, if you turn around and look at things like Hunger Games, turn around and look at Star Wars and what they're doing now with women representing in Star Wars, a lot of people are putting a lot of weight on Wonder Woman as a movie to make it, because otherwise they're going to, you know, the same conversation I think is going to come back. It's the same thing with them talking about Captain Marvel and Black Widow, I think. They're worried about putting their money forward on a film and not having, you know, people follow behind, the same way that sort of happened with, unfortunately, with Agent Carter, which is a huge deal because everybody, I think the fandom was super supportive of Agent Carter. It was clear about that. Mm-hmm. The problem is that the ratings were not there. People were watching online, people were not watching at the time, the Nielsen ratings were low, and so they said, well, clearly it's not doing really well, and they take it off the air because of that. So it's like, if you don't vote with your dollars to support this, if you don't actually show the production companies that like this is something that we want as a fandom, then it's just not going to happen. They will disappear.
And we know the power of fandoms in general. I mean, look at Deadpool. That's a character that his film was stuck in production hell for at least 15 years, 10, 15 years. And because of the power of fans of one clip being released, and the amount of fans that backed up that clip and demanded it, the studio decided to put it together. Now, granted, they cut the budget after the fact, but they still granted the film. So, I mean, with women and having superheroes like this in there, we could probably see something supported just as much if the dollars and the demand is there. I mean, we see outcry right now about, like, merchandise, how there's not enough for specific characters. Because they happen to be women, they think that these products are not going to sell because they want to have Captain America on the shirt and they don't want Agent Carter.
And it seems like female characters practically need a where's X character hashtag movement just to get that character to appear on anything. And then the companies seem to think, oh, they just want this character, not we want more of this kind of character, like more women, more people of color.
Well, I will say, I'm sorry, I have a friend of mine who actually works for, like, Hasbro, right? And so she, like, shouldn't talk to me about these things, but she does. That, like, oftentimes, like, this is an important thing that, like, people don't understand, is that it's not about what Marvel wants to put out sometimes, it's actually what the distributors ask for. Yeah. So it's about the stores themselves coming to them and saying, we want more Captain America because we want to market to boys. So, like, if fans go to these stores and say, we want more of this stuff, like, every time I go to Target, for example, and I find a, you know, Black Widow something or whatever, I tweet at them, like, I take pictures and like, yo, more of this. And if they see more of that from the people who are buying merchandise, like, DC had that line of women, girl dolls, right, the DC girls, those flew off the shelf, they disappeared, and now they're making a TV series out of it.
Or just buy online. I've started buying so much stuff online, because you can tell, like, I'm a huge Thor fan. I love MCU Thor, I love Jane Foster's Thor, and I love Agent Carter too. So when
You just love
went,
Thor, period.
Yeah, you just
anything with Thor, any version of Thor, amazing. But, you know, I went to find the merchandise for the new Thor online, and for a while, there wasn't much. There was only, you know, fan-made stuff, and that's awesome. Like, I love supporting artists and their individual creations, but it would be really nice if I could just order, like, a shirt with my favorite character. And it's clear that Marvel was doing a ton to defend and support this character, and then there wasn't the merch to back it up until, like, now, like, recently. Now there's a whole bunch. I can't keep up with all the shirts they have of her, and it's very infuriating. She's my favorite.
She has an action figure now too.
Yes.
I got it at Target and I was like, yeah, like finally.
Exactly, but it's, you know, it takes a while. There's definitely a delay, whether it's because of what the retailers, you know, want or aren't sure what consumers want, or because, you know, it just, for some reason, it takes so long to produce. And I remember even during season 1 of Agent Carter, I live tweeted almost every episode, and I was like, where can I buy a t-shirt of her? And for a while it was like,
Well, they answered you.
they answered me. For a while it was like just a generic SSR shirt, and I was like, I kind of want one with her on it. And so I ended up buying one on T-Fury, which was probably not even like officially licensed.
No, it's not.
Nope.
They're not. Nothing on there is officially licensed. So all right, we talked a lot about like the women that we currently see in the movies and things like that. What about the missed opportunities? What women superheroes could have been in these Marvel Cinematic Universe and the DC Universe? What should have been on film that had the opportunity? What do you guys think?
Spider-Woman, please.
Ooh.
Jessica Drew, where are you? Like, Jessica Jones is kind of like, so I'm a huge Jessica Jones fan. I was blessed to get the opportunity to meet the cast at New York Comic Con this past year, and just the care that they put into that show, especially in the representation of women with who've gone through violence and PTSD, has been incredible. But it's pretty clear that Jessica Jones is being used because they can't get Spider-Woman on the screen, and that's why Brian Michael Bendis did Jessica Jones in the first place, is because he loved Spider-Woman and couldn't do her, so he picked up Jessica Jones and did with her instead. But that character was a Hydra agent who turned to S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm like, where is she and why is she not in the middle of all this insanity that's going on? She's such a powerful character.
Ask Marvel.
We only now just got back Spider-Man, so I think we can give him a little elbow.
Yeah, let's give him some time, but I'm hoping one of these days.
So we can't even get a conversation.
Sorry, go ahead.
We can't even get like a single conversation between the two women on the team. Like 2 movies, and Natasha and Wanda don't say anything to each other.
Well, in the interest of fairness, what the hell did they talk about? Like, other than like a battle plan or something. I'm not gonna lie, I agree. I think that Scarlet Witch was not handled well in Civil War. She was very, like, sitting in the corner weeping. She's treated like a child, if she's treated like anything at all. So I don't know where they would even relate. Like, and that's what baffles me most about Black Widow, is that she's clearly a popular character. She's very well done. She's well-rounded, and she still doesn't have a film. I think that's really ridiculous.
Well, when you look at Civil War and any of the Avengers films in general, they made opportunities for these heroes to talk and have casual conversation. I mean, think about that scene in where they're all sitting there and playing with Thor's hammer, for instance.
That's Joss Whedon, though. Jeff is just,
Yeah.
you have to take that into account, like, that's Joss's thing, like, he loves to see that relationship, people bounce off of each other. That's his strong suit, and there should have been more of that in that film would have been much better if they had focused on that.
But I mean, that's where we can probably see opportunities for these two women to talk. That's not about like, all right, so I'm gonna take this target and you can take that target. You know, or maybe talking about just in general, like, all right, so how are you handling it? Like, I know you had a bad time. Are you okay? Is there anything I can do for you?
Let's be clear. Oh, I'm so sorry.
We didn't even see the team act, like, the Avengers team acting as a unit before, you know, all the Sokovia Accords and everything happened. I felt like that was just a huge weakness. They never felt like a unit to me.
To swap over to another film though that that has more women. Let's talk about X-Men for a second.
Yes.
I just saw Apocalypse.
No spoilers.
I'm not spoiling it.
I haven't seen that one.
But I love the movie. I went tremendously crazy in the theater about it. I literally was in the back waving my arms, and thankfully there was no one behind me. But like, it was just this is clearly a franchise that has many more women on the team, and yet how many conversations between women happen in those films? Like, you literally have like at least four women that are in the same space at any given time, and any conversation is still between the larger groups or between men and women, and a lot of their conversations are predicated upon how they interact with the men, especially, and this is the lost opportunity I think, that we're talking about, is what they've done with Mystique, is, Jennifer Lawrence is such an incredibly powerful actress, and she drives Days of the Future Past, she drives a lot of Apocalypse, but she has almost no interactions with Jean Grey. She has almost no interactions with Storm. None of them. Those were pictures online. But there's no places where they just have conversations together as women. The funny part is, you see pictures online of the stills of Jean Grey and Storm in the same space.
Deleted scenes?
Maybe, but like in the actual cut of the film, there's so little interaction. And it's so frustrating. Yeah, Photoshop. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm about to sound real ass backwards here, but I really don't know how. Only characters who would have made more sense to really have an extended conversation. And Jean and Steve do have a conversation in the plane. No spoilers, but the Horsemen. Oh, that's technically.
That's fine. Yeah,
okay. Well, Storm and Psylocke should have had a conversation, but at the same time, excluding Magneto, they're mostly props to Apocalypse, so they don't really even count technically for most of the film. So them talking would really have no effect on anything else. Like the focus is Apocalypse, destroying things, and then Magneto and what's going on with him, no spoilers. But having conversations, Mystique and Jean definitely could have talked more, I guess, but the movie's like, was it 2 hours and 24 minutes?
Yeah, it's a long film already.
It's
but I mean, let's talk about Psylocke as a sort of a missed opportunity then, because you're saying like, she was basically a prop, and Olivia Munn, as much as people were like, is she gonna be good? She put in a lot of work, physically, to make this role happen. And then she is drastically underused. And people are literally calling for whether or not she's gonna get more of an opportunity, I'm not gonna spoil anything. Is there gonna be more? What's gonna happen? We don't know, but the fact of the matter is, she becomes an action figure halfway through the film. And you're just, there's too many missed opportunities over and over for women that you're finally just sitting here going, what are we expecting? I'm hoping more for Suicide Squad, because obviously it's driven so much by women in that film, that I'm really hoping to see more from that.
Well, I think you definitely will see more from that. There's a lot more meat to the character of Harley Quinn. There just wasn't a lot going on with Psylocke, but there also wasn't a lot going on with Angel either. Yeah. So I don't think that was necessarily a women thing. It was more character development. And the character development just wasn't there. Frankly, I didn't care that she didn't have a lot to say. It didn't really even affect me. She wasn't a character I was drawn to. But I think the focus should really more be on, let's develop these characters, let's make them interesting so people can actually, give a shit.
So speaking of Suicide Squad, what do you think about Will Smith's casting?
Shocked. Shocked. But I know he's wanted to be a superhero for a long time. He auditioned for Robin and they were like, no. So, and then he tried to do his own thing with Hancock, and that was
interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. So I'm excited to. I love Will Smith. He hasn't done a true summer blockbuster in a really long time. So I'm hoping this is the thing to I'm a 90s kid, so I was like, every year I was like, oh, Will Smith, Will Smith, Will Smith. So I'm really hoping this is the Will Smith thing to go on.
I was sad he wasn't back in Independence Day. I was like, what?
Oh my God.
Right? I was so mad.
Now, like, do you think it's gonna end up being another Hendall situation where people are like, well, he's not really the character as he's usually portrayed?
I mean, every character, when an actor in a film bases off a character in a fiction or non-fiction, whatever, they're always going to adapt it their own way. I mean, it's in the same way for like theatrical plays too. If you take The Heiress, I'm really dating myself, back in the 40s, and then it was written from a book, then adapted to a play back in the 1800s. It was completely different. Like, they cut out a character completely. She had a strong role in the book and the play, and nowadays it's, you know, it's what sells.
And not only that, what people have to understand is, one, it's an adaptation. I don't care what was in the comic.
Exactly.
I don't care what was in the book. What you have to understand is it's an adaptation. Like, look it up what that means. That's the first thing. Second thing, you have a human being bringing life to this role. So it's gonna be, they're gonna own it. If they're good, they're gonna own it. Like, and I know this is slightly off topic, but like, when you hear about comic Michonne, who gives a shit? We're talking about Denise Michonne, we're talking about the TV show. So what people have to separate one source material from the current source material or the new source material. It's going to be its own thing. It's going to be its own universe, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be strictly
And relating to that point, you know, what Kate said is really important about marketing. These movies have to appeal to the mass market, and not just in the United States either. They have to appeal to a global market. So what creators and these brands can get away with, I guess, in terms of being super awesome and progressive, is going to always be greater in, you know, the comic books and the printed form. And it's always going to be a little bit behind in the movies, because unfortunately, the mass audience is not necessarily ready or accepting of all of these characters or all of these portrayals. So I'm really happy that they're doing more of that in the comics, but going back to the title of this panel, it would be nice if they pushed a little bit harder in the films, because it's pretty well established that if DC or Marvel puts out a movie, people are going to go see it, you know?
Even if they don't know the characters.
I don't even know if I'm going to like Thor Ragnarok, but it's a Thor movie. I'm going to go, right? Like, all the stuff
You're
I'm
gonna like
hearing,
Thor no matter what.
all the stuff I'm hearing, I'm like, I don't know if I'm even really going to like it. Is it a buddy cop movie? You know, like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to like it. You know, now Jane Foster's not in it, and I'm like, I'm not going to like that. But I'm so loyal to the franchise, and Thor's the best. So obviously I'm still going to go. And I think, you know, fans who maybe aren't as progressive, probably, like a lot of them probably feel the same way, or at the very least, these big movies are so popular, we can afford to lose a small percentage of the audience going to see the movies, considering even just for the first Avengers movie, it was almost half of the audience was female. So, you know, the numbers are there to support, you know, who is going to see these movies, and that it's going to be profitable to include diversity in these movies.
And I'm sorry, Joe, just to expand on the film and marketing in general, a lot of people say there are not many women in Hollywood. That's mostly geared towards the female directors that haven't been picked. That's why we're seeing so many more indie films nowadays. But technically, most of the heads of these companies, they're women, but it's the shareholders who are predominantly men that want all these action films, and why they don't have all these. All these films, DC, Marvel, all the Warner Brothers, they're all action films because that's what these shareholders want to see. And predominantly through time, it's always been men who have been the superheroes. It's more and more coming up nowadays, and since we were in the sci-fi age and now it's all being redone in the CGI animation age, which we're in now, maybe that'll be expanded upon.
We do see a lot of changes with that, though. Like, Guardians of the Galaxy was written by a woman, although, like, and they had thought it was one of those scripts that was kind of a throwaway. Marvel had a script writing camp, and they proposed to a bunch of writers to, here's some titles that are kind of like B-rated titles, feel free to write a script and we'll see which ones are the best, and that one will possibly become a movie. And Guardians of the Galaxy was one of them, and nobody wanted to take it except for this one woman who said, well, I think I can make a great movie out of this. And she wrote a fantastic script, and even though almost nobody knew the characters that well, it ended up becoming a huge blockbuster as a movie. And that's a great example of characters that people don't know, whether they're men, women, disabled, racial diversity, anything like that. As long as people see that it is done by one of these two brands, they'll go. Whether or not they feel like they know these characters, they'll just go for sheer curiosity.
And so I think that's a bad thing, actually. I think, here's where I, defer. We have brand loyalty to these companies. There's absolutely no question about that. But again, what I said earlier is, when you vote with your dollars, you're saying something. So if you vote with your dollars and you go to a film that has bad representation, you're backing that. You're continuing to back bad representation by giving your money and supporting and saying, well, okay, I'm going to go see whatever they put out. If I think that a film has, bad representation from the way that I've seen in the previews, I'm not giving them my money because I want them to understand you're going to lose money if you continue to make poor choices in your filmmaking. And any other industry, like if somebody said, wow, this book really has bad representation, I'm gonna stop reading it, people notice. If you stop spending money, people will start noticing. And so, I'll be honest with you, I didn't actually go see Batman Superman on my dime. I got paid to do it because I'm a blogger, I got to do that. But I would not have spent my money on it. Because in my eyes, I was like, I don't really think that, Wonder Woman looks like she got a good shake in this. I wasn't interested in seeing it. And so for that reason, I was going to save my money to spend it on the Wonder Woman movie, where I'm more excited about the representation. Suicide Squad, I have very mixed feelings about too, right? So I'm really excited that Harley Quinn seems to have a really good representation, but I'm really angry at Enchantress's representation, right? She's a background character who's been put into something that looks like it's off the cover of Heavy Metal magazine for no reason.
But you also have to keep in mind, I'm sorry, that they're trying to gear toward an audience that hasn't read any of the comic books, and they're basing it off the old films. I hated Batman until I saw Batman vs. Superman. I was a full believer because Ben Affleck was able to portray an older Batman, and that the character was technically already established from everything that we've seen over time. So that's what they're trying to do with these films. I wasn't really following the Marvel films until one, I started dating him, and two, until I saw Guardians of the Galaxy, which I hate CGI animation. I hate it all over the place. But when it's used properly, like it was in Guardians, then it worked. Because I was a non-comic book reader at that point.
Yeah, I think it works overall. I think that there's just places where, when I see it, I have to make that choice for myself, and I think everybody does. Everybody chooses what they're going to spend their money on, and that evens out in the end. I think there are some things in Suicide Squad that I don't like talking about, like Enchantress. The other one is, I'm sorry, I'm an old school Amanda Waller fan. Every single time she's on screen, they make her skinny. Where is the body representation? And I'm sorry, they're on television when it was an Arrow, they did it, and then in 52 they decided to do it, and all of a sudden it's completely fine. She was one of the only plus-size characters in comics that you can talk about safely and comfortably. I'm terrified of what Eddie Campbell is going to look like when they do Wonder Woman. Why is she going to be, suddenly tiny? I'm sorry, it's important that body representation is there. So, for me, that's a negative point towards a film for me, and I'll choose whether or not my money goes there based on those points.
But sex sells at the same time.
Well, Viola Davis is the new Amanda Waller, and she's just amazing. So
She looks fantastic. Yeah, I agree with you.
I didn't even know that Amanda Waller was plus-size. I didn't know. I had no idea. So that's very indicative of the audience that we're talking about. They just don't know, and I think that the trailers, they're pushing Will Smith. I don't know who his character is, but I know Will Smith. They're pushing Harley Quinn. I grew up watching Harley Quinn and the Joker in the 90s on the cartoon, so I know who she is. Everyone else is kind of a wash. So
I don't know, I really think they only picked Will Smith because of his name. I'm not really a huge Will Smith fan. I think he's a great actor, but they really just used his name just to bump the film. I really think that's all they did.
That's a harsh statement, but
possibly did. He'll always be Will Smith, like Tom Cruise.
Oh, yeah.
Always be Tom Cruise, but yeah, you're right. They probably did just use him for the name, but he looks cool. So.
And he's also a very highly recognized actor. And with that, because Suicide Squad isn't with all the comic book heroes that we know, it's purely the villains.
Can I bring up one thing that they do with representation in that film really well? Sure. I'm excited to see Harley Quinn taking a front row seat in that film. It's pretty clear. I've had conflicted feelings about Harley Quinn for years. there's a lot of misrepresentation for her in the comics that makes me uncomfortable. I think that they've decided to make her like front and center and give her a lot of agency from what I've seen just in the trailers. That makes me a lot more comfortable with her. But to have a character who is so predominantly suffering from mental illness as a front row character is really incredible. What you mentioned about, you know, Batman showing that like he's clearly got some like mental stress issues going on. That's a disability representation that's really important.
He's a therapist.
Yeah.
He takes medications for his psychological problems, and he refers to himself in the third person. So if you haven't seen it, it's very interesting character-wise.
And that's,
So
yeah.
speaking of disability, I mean, that's a really great point of like how many disabled characters do we actually see on screen in superhero films? Another one I can think of is Iron Man, actually. Tony Stark with, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder. He is somebody that has gone through a lot of crap, and nobody really supports him to kind of help him along. And so like we see him as a character having these problems, and obviously he's super paranoid, which is the driving plot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, if you haven't noticed that yet. And so he's really the reason why a lot of these problems pop up in this particular movie universe. And it's basically because of this kind of disability, this problem that nobody has helped him out with therapy or anything else.
See, yeah, that's the big problem though with Tony Stark, in my opinion, is that like in the comic books, they clearly acknowledge not only does he have like issues with alcoholism in the comics, not only does he have like, he goes to see a therapist on a regular basis in the comics. What they don't do is represent, I think, him seeking out help in the MCU in general. And like, I think for that reason, like to me, I'm sorry, it's Civil War, I'm on Team Cap. Tony is the villain of most of these films for me at this point. Like, he has actually driven so many bad things to happen that at this point I'm like, what's the difference between you and Dr. Doom? Like, really? I mean, just,
Yeah, he's
like,
got
good
good
intentions.
relatable for me over time, and I did have PTSD as a result of a car accident, and so I actually really enjoyed when they brought that into the character in the MCU. But over time, I've actually got like further and further apart, you know, from Tony as far as how I relate to him, because he does almost kind of become a